Where reach?
We finished the verse 8. We're at verse 8.
Verse 8. I say verse 8. I think we finish. I think this one. I think I pay homage to. I think I finished verse 8. Now we reach verse 9. Right. Now. So. I think so here I'm not sure how far you follow this. I think if we do some discussion on particular important point, I think we better do this so that you get better idea what we are talking about, what we are dealing, right? Otherwise, if I keep on I'm not sure of you get the understanding, right? So verse 9, to help heal sentient beings, O benefactor, you have taught the peerless reason to ascertain emptiness, the heart of the teaching. To help heal to help heal destitute sentient beings, because sentient beings are destitute, in a situation of destitute. One need to help, one need to help them through expounding the teaching on dependent arising, right? So because of not ignorant of this dependent arising, they are enveloped in the darkness. O benefactor, so Buddha taught out of pure love and out of high quality of the fullest strength of love and compassion for the destitute sentient beings. And but for what purpose Buddha taught this, the teaching of dependent arising is to heal them, to heal them internally, not externally, to heal them internally, or to awaken from the deep slumber of the the ignorance. So because of this, Buddha taught the teaching of dependent arising, or what you call as the emptiness or dependent arising, the peerless reason to ascertain emptiness, the heart of the teaching. Because we all sometimes the teaching of emptiness is said to be the heart of the Buddha's teaching, or the dependent arising is said to be the heart of the Buddha's teaching, because without Buddha taught limitless, the vast number of teachings. All these teachings are Buddha taught in order to let us to cultivate this wisdom, this peerless wisdom, and also whether we would like to achieve the state of the arhat or pratikaya Buddha state, or whether we want to achieve the highest form of enlightenment. The wisdom remains the cultivation of the wisdom is indispensable. Without which there is no way that we can bring an end to suffering. So the right understanding. First of all, in order to gain the deeper experience, we need to cultivate the wisdom. In order to cultivate the wisdom, we need to go through reflection. Reflection. In order to go through the right form of kind of reflection, we really need to have the much deeper understanding. Understanding the correct understanding, the right understanding of what is really meant by dependent arising and emptiness. In order to do so, we then really need to hear the hear the instructions or hear the teachings of what we are dealing here now, right? So the peerless reason to ascertain emptiness, the heart of the teaching. Now, this is important, also very important. Buddha taught this, the heart essence of the teaching, that is the emptiness. Now, this emptiness is not that obvious and evident to our sensorial perceptions, right? Sensorial perception, we all know this, when we talk about if things are, for example, like impermanent, the transient nature of the things and events, the emptiness nature of all the things and events, if these things are sudden, something which is very evident and obvious to our sensorial perception, then of course we can make some kind of the manifest transformation, right? Manifest transformation. For example, when we see the suffering sentient beings, it at least give rise to some form of compassion, because the object that we can see nakedly. Whereas when we talk about emptiness, the impermanent nature, these we really need gain some kind of scrutiny or examination, to prove the validity, right? To prove the authenticity. So therefore, the peerless reason to ascertain. Now, what we are going to ascertain, right? What we are going to ascertain is we are going to ascertain the emptiness. How we are going to ascertain emptiness is now by the king of reason, which is the king of reason, that is dependent arising. So, with the help of dependent arising, with the understanding of dependent arising, with ascertaining the dependent arising, then we come to understand, we come to ascertain the emptiness with the help of the dependent arising, as the teaching, as a meshless reason, meshless reason, and the powerful, the king of reason, that is dependent arising, right? Now, so the dependent arising, when we try to prove all the things, the things of the past, the things of the present, the things of the future, all the existent phenomena of the past, present, and future, all without exception, they are devoid of intrinsic reality, true existence. They are empty of their nature. They are empty of the nature, empty of the devoid, empty of the inherent existence, right? Inherent existence. Now, to prove that all the things are devoid of inherent nature, intrinsic nature, dependent arising is the king, the king, whatever reason you use, finally you have to come to the dependent arising, right? Dependent arising. Without going through dependent arising, one cannot, gain much, conviction, right? So therefore, dependent arising is sometimes called as the king, king. Now, for example, say, so in my mind, in order to cultivate that wisdom, in order to cultivate the wisdom of the emptiness, you have to rely on the dependent arising as a reason. But now, how are we going to prove the authenticity and to prove the validity of the dependent arising? Again, that's very important, right? How we are going to prove, right? So, for example, if we give a very some kind of simple example, on the other side of the pass, on the other side of the mountain, on the other side of the mountain, on the other side of the mountain, I am not sure, if there is fire or not. I am not sure, I am skeptical if there is fire or not. And then somebody, my friend, who told me there is no need to be skeptical. There is a fire. He told me, because what reason he used? Because there is smoke. Right. So where there is a smoke, there is a fire. So now I understand, if where there is a smoke, there is a fire. I know this, logic, syllogism. I know this very simple logic. Now, now I can infer that there is a fire in the other side of the mountain, because there is a smoke. Now I also use very simple example. What simple example I use is something which is very obvious to me, obvious to everybody. Now I can use the kitchen. I can use kitchen as an example. We all know in the kitchen where there is a fire, where there is a smoke, there is a fire. Right. Without fire, you cannot get smoke. Right. Where there is a fire, not necessarily have smoke. Right. But where there is a smoke, there should be fire. Where there is a fire, not necessarily should have smoke. Right. For example, in the welding, place, there is no. They use the electrical, something like this. No, no smoke, right? So that's easy, right? So like this, now I understand. Oh, in the kitchen, I know there is a fire because there is a smoke, and I also know that where there is a smoke, there is a fire. I come to know. Now, with this kind of simple logic, my skeptical view regarding the existence of the fire on the back side of the mountain is dispelled, because I use simple logic. Right? Similarly, sometimes when we talk about the consciousness, consciousness or the mind, we are talking about the mind and the consciousness. Actually, we have no idea, of what really the mind is, right? Because, theoretically, there is a definition of the mind, but this theory, the definition of the mind, in order to prove that the mind possesses the clarity and the luminous nature and the awareness nature, we need to go through the experience, right? The experience. So, those kind of, for example, again, I can use the a lot of, different, beautiful examples, like, right? For example, there I have a very strong kind of the believing in the permanent of something, and then this kind of thinking about the object make me always restless. Then somebody told me, somebody come and he had a glass, glass. Here's a glass. I know, for example, like wristwatch. I have a good wristwatch, Wristwatch, all of a sudden the wristwatch, fall down and it break. I really, kind of unhappy, right? Unhappy. Because why unhappy is because I thought this watch is permanent, is something eternal, lasts forever. So I am unhappy, because this watch is also very expensive, right? I could not sleep even in the night time, This continue to, oh, how precious this watch is. Now it's no longer with me. Now somebody come in order to dispel my unhappiness, mental kind of torture. Somebody come, and then somebody has something glass, glass, something good thing, and then in my mind, I'm very really thinking this watch is something very precious, it's something permanent. So I'm not ready to let go this the permanent thinking, the watch as a permanent stuff. So somebody come, why you are unhappy, right? All the compounded things is subject to impermanent. And then I get some idea. Oh, really? Right. So at some point my permanent thinking is reduced, my unhappiness is reduced, because that person makes some sense, give me some sense, and then to further increase my conviction, that person drop some very good thing, right? The same watch or the same cup, beautiful porcelain cup, he break it in front of me. Can you see now? Oh, I see. Oh, that too break. Now slowly I gained my wristwatch is truly impermanent because of the help of the other's introduction, right? So he vividly show me that things go through impermanent. He vividly show me through example, very simple example, right? So something like this. So finally I developed the kind of wisdom which really understand the impermanent nature of the watch, the transient nature of the watch, right? Where does this wisdom come from? Where did I got this wisdom? Because I saw with my eye, naked eye, with other example. So simple example can be used, in almost all the Buddhist epistemology, Buddhist transformation of the mind. When we talk about the mental training, when we talk about the transformation of the mind, all the simple example are being used. Simple example are being used. Finally, also, how can we do not know, that person is compassionate or not? But again, we use the simple logic. Finally, that person has, for example, kind of some altruistic mind, bodhicitta. Although we can roughly say, I do not know what's going on in your mind, other people's mind, but roughly we can say, right, by using the logic, like like again, other parts of the mountain, there's a river, there's some kind of desert. We cannot deny that there is no water. When we see the bird, the bird which relies on the water drinking bird, there is one bird called water drinking bird. Now we can infer, oh, there is a water, because I can, without water, the bird cannot survive. So by seeing the bird, I can infer there should be water, right? So many of the things go through in this way. And same like the compassionate person, although we can do not, as I said earlier, we do not exactly infer the realization, the attainments of in somebody's mind, but we can roughly infer that, because the person, when they see the sentient beings, suffering sentient beings, the tears calm down, the skin on the hair stands still. These rough, the rough kind of symbol or rough signs, which shows, the person has some kind of, loving compassion in his or her mind, right? So like this. So dependent arising is the very, the king, which proves the validity of the emptiness. Right. Now here, so now, for example, I may say this book. We say this book, this prayer book. This prayer book, we all understand, right? This prayer book. Now we are using logic. This prayer book is devoid or empty of inherent existence. This prayer book is empty of inherent existence because it is dependent arising. When I say dependent arising, for the time being, I am referring to causal dependent arising, causal dependent origination, because this book is comes into being because of the cause and condition. So, therefore, it is a causal dependent origination, right. Now you see, normally I'm, for example, I just say somebody, again, like somebody has very strong the grasping. Someone has a very kind of strong grasping at now, for example, better for example, like the mobile, right. Now I can take myself an example. This mobile, I have a very strong grasping. Just take an example, right. Small grasping is okay, but too much grasping, it would give us sleepless night, right. But I don't have strong grasping over this, right. So anyway, right. So now, like earlier we discussed, you use some kind of you want to help me. You really want to help me to dispel my suffering. Some kind of suffering. Relating to this. Stuff. Relating to this stuff. And then what you do say is, oh, sometimes we say, oh, don't get attached to these things. You pat it, on my back. It's not much use, because by doing this, of course, very good. But by just doing this, won't dispel my kind of dissatisfaction or suffering. So now, if somebody is intelligent, smart, they use logic. Oh, this mobile is, for example, like empty of inherent existence, right? Empty of inherent existence. You empty of inherent existence. Now, what reason you are going to use? Now, you are going to use, because it is dependent arising, right? It is causal dependent arising. Causal dependent arising. Why you use this logic to me? Why use? What is the purpose? In order to dispel my suffering, right? The purpose is dispel my suffering by understanding and by perceiving that this mobile is the mere empty of the empty nature of this mobile, the emptiness nature of this mobile, right. So only by using the logic as dependent arising logic. So then I am going to think, oh, how it relates to my experience, right? Something like this. I am going to analyze, I am going to reflect, right? So like this. Then afterwards, because of this, I gain some understanding. Through reflection, I also gain some wisdom, ascertaining this mobile is no longer enjoy any kind of independent existence, right? Enjoying any kind of independent existence. I get relieved. I really get relieved. My, the suffering is, my suffering is really, subsided to a certain extent, or reduced to a certain extent, right? Right. Now, when you use the dependent origination, right? You use the dependent origination. This dependent origination, causal dependent origination, this dispel my kind of how to say, this dispel my true grasping. Just by using the dependent origination, right? Will it dispel? Right? Will it dispel my suffering? Because last time we discussed, dependent origination and the empty of inherent existence. When we talk about the empty of inherent existence, when we talk about the empty of inherent existence, that means things does not have any essence. When we try to find, things have no essence of their own from its own side. There is not a single essence which we can find, right? There is not a single essence. So therefore, but then we don't deny, we do not deny that the things does not exist any longer. We do not deny that things does not exist any longer, because things are dependent origination. Things are dependent on its own causes and conditions, many causes and conditions. If things dependent on many causes and conditions, this shows things do not have any intrinsic nature, any essence, right? So therefore, when we say, for example, this book is empty of inherent existence. The empty of this book as an empty of inherent existence now negate or eliminate. Eliminate what? Eliminate what? Eliminate the extreme of nihilism, right? Nihilism. So this is very important. You need to understand. Very, very important. When we use the dependent origination, first we need to have some understanding. Then I will give some caution, and then when we use the dependent origination now dispel or eliminate what? Eliminate the extreme of eternalism or absolutism, right? So this powerful syllogism, this powerful logic and reason dispel or eliminate the two extremes, the extremes of nihilism and eternalism. Yeah, right. Okay, you got it. So this is unique in the Arya Nagarjuna's philosophy system, very unique. other schools other than Prasangika, consequentialist Madhyamika, they all believe dependent origination dispel the extreme of nihilism, empty of inherent existence, dispel the extreme of eternalism, absolutism. Here in Prasamika, this is reversed, completely reversed, right? Now here, so in order to gain your conviction, I am going to cite the scriptural authority. Again, this is Jetsongapa's Lamrim, not Lamrim. Three principal aspects of the path. You see. Moreover, when they arise as one, dependent origination and empty, not alternating but simultaneous, from merely seeing infallible dependent relationship, then cause and effect. When you see the cause and effect, dependent origination in the form of cause and effect, comes certain knowledge that destroy all grasping at the object. Right. At that time, the analysis of view is complete. At that time, you have completely understood. You have completely gained the correct understanding and ascertain the view, the ultimate view. Right. This is one thing. And moreover, I will another word. Moreover, when the extreme of existence is dispelled by appearance. Now here, appearance means dependent origination, dependent arising. By the use of dependent arising, dependent origination, what is dispelled is extreme of eternalism, right? Dependent origination dispel the extreme of eternalism, and the extreme of non-existence is dispelled by emptiness, right? So two extremes are dispelled by this logic, and how emptiness is perceived as cause and effect. You will not be captivated by extreme views, very clearly set, right? So this is what we understand, right? We understand very clearly. Now I am going to put the question, right? This is much better. If that is the case, now for example, I would say, oh, I can use the more example of battery like this battery, So the one example not enough. So this battery, I said, I may say this battery is empty of inherent existence, and then I say, because I use the logic, because this is dependent arising, because this is causal dependent arising, right? Now you got this idea, right? Now, because you thought I use this reason because you are believing that this battery is independent existence. Oh, this is something solid over there, something absolute. You believe in this, in many things, we believe in that way, right? Now, therefore, in order to destroy this belief, I am using the logic. This battery is empty of inherent existence, I say, because this is dependent arising, right? So now, when I use this, right, dependent arising, when you understand that this battery is just dependent arising, you understood emptiness, right? Think very carefully. You understood emptiness, right? You already understood emptiness. You already ascertained emptiness, You already realize emptiness, a certain emptiness, perceive emptiness. Huh? I say, no, not directly or not directly, we are not talking. Perceive or a certain emptiness, because you develop a wisdom, right? You already develop wisdom, right? Huh?
Yes.
If you, by just, this battery, I say it's empty of inherent existence, because when I use the dependent arising, or this battery is dependent arising, when you think about the dependent arising, you develop a wisdom. The moment you understand that this battery is a causal dependent arising, you come to understand emptiness, you come to perceive emptiness, you come to ascertain the emptiness, right? Now, if you say yes, now what is the point of raising my question? Why I, right? If you understand, so what is the purpose? I am just, asking, raising this logic in order that you realize the emptiness of this battery. If you already, understand by understanding the dependent arising, you already come to, perceive emptiness. Then what is the point of my all this, stuff? If you say no, yeah, not right.
Yeah. No.
If you say no, then I would say yes. I would say yes, because now you think, because dependent arising already eliminated what? Intrinsic reality.
Yeah.
Intrinsic reality. In order to realize emptiness, you need to eliminate intrinsic reality.
Right.
Then what?
Then
What's going on? Huh? Because you already eliminated. Because you say dependent arising and empty nature. This is the uniqueness of the really the beauty of the Prasangika Madhyamika. But then that beauty get worse, if you say like this. Right? Because you just think about the dependent arising, you come to understand and realize emptiness. If there is so, then there is no my effort. My just simple purpose is that because you have grasping, I want to remove the grasping, I want to reduce the grasping. So that's why I use the logic. If you just realize emptiness by ascertaining, by realizing this battery as dependent origination, there's no point for me to use the dependent arising logic. What's that? The same, the same. For example, if I say, now here again, when you try to prove, to something is something is dependent, right? The lack of the selfless nature, the empty nature of everything. When we try to prove, we always go through the most simple example, right? Most simple example. For example, right? When we talk about the time, when we talk about the time and something which is related to you, right? Something which is related to you. For example, your belongings. When we try to ascertain, when we try to how to say, when we try to ascertain, when we try to prove the empty nature of your belonging and the empty of the time, your belonging and the time, which is more difficult to perceive. The time is more difficult to perceive. The time, the empty nature of the time is more difficult, right? The empty nature of the time is more difficult because you have no idea what time is. When we talk about your clothing, you can see. We can really see, your cup, your all the watch, mobile and everything. You can see, So therefore, these are used an example. A simple thing is used an example. For example, also when we say that this table is the empty of inherent existence. Now what we use is, for example, like the image of the image in the moon water, and then the image in the mirror. The image in the mirror is, we all know, right? The image of the elephant in the mirror is not just an image, not an elephant. We all know. There's not. So therefore, very simple is used. Simple example is used. Right. So therefore, we say many of the wisdom perceiving the hidden phenomena like impermanent, like cessation, like emptiness. All these are finally go through sensorial perceptions, our sensorial perceptions, because sensorial perception, by using a simple logic, simple example, metaphor, simple analogy, then through that way we then go further, we go much deeper to reach to the more hidden phenomena, like this, right? So now we come back again to this. What about this? Not this one. Oh yeah. This I will read this. So this is Jizongabas Ocean of Reasoning, right? Ocean of Reasoning, right? How the appearance dependent origination can eliminate the extreme of nihilism. Right. Now, yeah. So if oh, huh?
Is it extreme like eternalism?
In the extreme of dependent origination, the extreme of the eternalism, right? Absolutism. This the dependent origination, the understanding of dependent origination, right? So that if you interest, if this book is really wonderful, if you have time, it is not that difficult. If you have some idea about, so this we are laying some basis. So then later on when you read, you get some idea, right? Thus essencelessness, essencelessness is thus established just by reasoning from dependent origination, right? So empty of inherent existence. Empty of inherent existence is thus established just by reasoning from dependent origination. Thus just by ascertaining causality dependent origination, one destroy all the apparition graphs, one destroy all the the object of intrinsic reality, inherent existence, which is the object of grasping, right, as true existence. From that point on, eternalism and nihilism, fabrication and deprecation, all of the antithesis of the right view are cut off. Right? As long as one does not understand the meaning of dependent origination as emptiness of essence, thus explained, the residue will remain of the true existence, apparitions, true existence, grasped as truly existence. Or on the other hand, one will not free from extremes of eternalism and nihilism, as one could not have genuine assertment of deeper dependent origination, being uncomfortable with dependent origination in one's own system, as in one with the cause that arises, right? So it's very clear. By understanding the dependent origination, all the perverted views, all the fabrications, all the distorted views are destroyed. Understand dependent origination, right? So therefore, I use this logic reason. Now here, so when I say, so the important thing is now I just raised this as a to maybe give, I raised this question to give you some how to say to give you some idea, Anyway, when we say everything, I could say compounded things, all the compounded things, all the uncompounded things, all the compounded and uncompounded things, I would say they are empty of inherent existence because they are dependent arising. Now here, this very simple logic dispel or eliminate the two extremes, extreme of nihilism and extreme of eternalism. I already said, right? The dependent origination dispel the extreme of the eternalism, and the empty, the empty nature dispel the extreme of the nihilism. Now how? This is the real. We will find the real solution, right? Now here, also dependent origination in many of the texts. If you go through this ocean of reasoning in many of the Jazangabha's texts, he say dependent origination is the meaning of the emptiness, and emptiness can be seen as the meaning of the dependent arising, right? Not only this, emptiness is used, dependent arising is used as an reason to ascend emptiness, right? So they help each other. Now in what ways? When we talk about dependent arising is seen as a means of emptiness, and emptiness is seen as a meaning of dependent arising. What does that mean? Right? Now the solution is one. Only one solution there is. Dependent arising as a meaning of emptiness, and emptiness as a meaning of dependent arising. This logic, this simple logic, dispel all the elaborations, all the extremes of nihilism and eternalism. All this one solution, right? Now, what is that solution? Is now first we use this logic, right? Logic. oh, this battery is empty of inherent existence because it's dependent origination. Now we think dependent origination. Dependent origination, because of having a certain, for example, this battery as dependent arising, by the power of having a certain this dependent arising, by the virtue of having a certain this battery as dependent arising, now this understanding, this cognition, valid cognition, this very understanding give rise to what? This very understanding induce valid cognition with which perceive the emptiness, right? So perceiving of emptiness comes because of what? Because of understanding this as a dependent arising. So therefore, this understanding this as a dependent arising eliminate eternalism, extreme of eternalism, right? Similarly, this battery as an emptiness, we ascertain this battery is as empty of inherent existence, because now I am habituated with this kind of thinking. I am familiarizing that emptiness does not mean nothingness. It says something. It says a lot, right? It says a lot. So I can understand that this emptiness has something to do with relative truth, right? Relative truth, and that is dependent arising. That is causal dependent arising. So now, because I understood this battery as empty of inherent existence by the power of such understanding, right? By the power of such understanding, and by the virtue of this kind of understanding, it gives rise to, again, what? It induce the wisdom or valid cognition which a certain dependent arising. This dependent arising. So this dependent arising now, this mind eliminate the extreme of this mind, eliminate the extreme of what? Terminate. Nihilism, right? That happened because of understanding this battery is impermanent. Right? First you understand emptiness, this, and then when you think a whole lot, about this, and then when you think again and again, reflect again and again, at a while, this understanding, this wisdom, I gain a wisdom which ascertain this battery as emptiness. So this wisdom induce the wisdom of understanding, the wisdom of realizing the dependent origination. Similarly, the same. The wisdom of dependent arising. The wisdom of dependent arising induces the wisdom of emptiness. The emptiness of wisdom induces the wisdom of dependent arising. This is what is meant by emptiness can be seen as dependent origination. Dependent origination can be seen as the meaning of emptiness. This logic eliminates the two extremes. So this is the solution. Because so they help each other. Rather than negating each other, they are helping each other. There is no negation. So the empty of the inherent existence and the functionality, the dependent origination can happen harmoniously, can function harmoniously without any contradiction, right? And then now whereas, although better, then we read and then we will come, So this means emptiness, the heart of the teaching. This way of dependent origination, those who perceive it as contradictory or as unestablished, how can they comprehend your system? This way of dependent origination. So this way of dependent origination as the meshless reason. Dependent origination, meshless reason which ascertain the validity and the validity of the emptiness, right? So this way of dependent origination, those who perceive it as contradictory, or as unestablished, how can they comprehend your system? They don't comprehend, right? There is no way that they can comprehend this. The beauty lies in the core of the Arya Nagarjuna's system, because this is a contradiction here. If you say, oh, everything is dependent origination, all the dependent origination, the dependent origination means that things are true existence. So then there is no way that you don't. There is no way that you come to understand, because you feel, because you believe in the contradiction, because you assert the contradiction. You believe in the contradiction. The contradiction, two contradiction things. The dependent origination, things as dependent origination, and the things as intrinsic reality. These are completely contradictory in the in the beauties, in the system of the beauty of Arya Nagarjuna system. Completely unrelated thing, right? So those who believe in this theory, there is no way that they can come to understand the your system, the profundity and the beauty of your system. For you, when one sees emptiness in terms of meaning of dependent origination, then being devoid of intrinsic existence and possessing valid functions, do not contradict, right? For you, when one sees emptiness, now here say, for you, when one sees in emptiness in terms of meaning of dependent origination, this Jazangaba is saying, when one sees emptiness in terms of meaning of dependent origination, then being devoid of intrinsic existence and possessing valid functions, do not contradict. So things are devoid of things are devoid of intrinsic reality. Although things are devoid of intrinsic reality, but things still function. The cause can function, the cause can posit, the result can posit. If we work hard, we achieve liberation. We bring in, we are able to bring an end to the cessation suffering, which then is the cessation. So all these are possible because things are empty of inherent existence. If things are true existence, there is no way that things can function. Whereas when one sees the opposite, since there can be no function in emptiness, no emptiness in what has function, one falls into the dreadful abyss you maintain. Whereas when one sees the opposite, since there can be no function in emptiness, no emptiness in what has function, one falls into the dreadful abyss you maintain. So now here it says number 12, right? So you thought the beauty, the beauty, such a beauty that everything comes into the come into being purely as the result of the aggregation of the many factors and conditions. This is the reality, right? This is the reality. And then, because things are coming into being purely as the result of the aggregation of many factors and conditions, therefore things are empty of inherent existence. However, Jitsongkhapa is saying, however, if you see the dependent origination and emptiness as completely contradictory, right? If things are dependent origination, things should be in the other school. What do they say is everything, those things, any dependent origination, causal dependent arising, any causal dependent arising, because they are causal dependent arising, that means they are dependent on what? They are empty of inherent existence. No, they are not empty of inherent existence. They are true existence. Lower school they say they are true existence, because things are dependent origination, causal dependent origination. Whatever is causal dependent origination, right? Whatever is the causal dependent origination, and whatever is the the dependent origination of the paths, because things are dependent on many paths, they say. So anyway, when the dependent origination, if things are dependent origination, they are not devoid of intrinsic reality. They are true existence, they say, right? If things are not true existence, then things cannot function. Things cannot function. Cause and effect cannot function. This cannot be posit. So therefore, in the dependent origination, they do see. In the dependent origination, they do see that things have true nature. There is essence. They are essence. They do see the dependent origination and the empty of inherent existence as totally contradictory, right? No emptiness in what has functions. One falls into the, because of this nature, because of their finding, their believing in the emptiness of the inherent existence and the dependent origination as completely contradictory, mutually exclusive. Because of this, the system of positing things have essence have fallen into the extreme of nihilism or eternalism. Because of this, they are outside. Because of this, they are outside the refutation. They are outside the refutation. They are outside the refutation and the negation of the true extremes, because they have fallen into the extreme of nihilism and eternalism. We just if you here again, verse 10, the way of dependent origination, those who perceive it as contradictory. What does that mean? As contradictory or as unestablished? How they comprehend your system? Contradictory means, if you use the logic, things are anything, right? For example, like compounded things, any compounded things. If you use any compounded things, we say, if we say things are empty of inherent existence because they are dependent origination. If we say they are dependent origination, nihilist means they are, in India there are some philosophy, school of thought. In one school of thought it is called Charvakaya, who only believe in this life, no past life, no next life, only, if things exist, all the obvious, the manifest, think, those things which are, perceivable to the sensual perception. If something which is beyond their, sensual perceptions, they deny the existence, right? So this is Charvakaya, Charvakaya, nihilist. So therefore, for this school of thought, if we say things are, things are empty of inherent existence because things are dependent origination. What they do say, oh, does not exist. So this is, so this is what is meant unestablished, because they say dependent origination does not exist, right? Dependent origination, causal dependent origination does not exist. So this in the text it says, we do say nihilist. The nihilists do not believe in do not deny the dependent origination, right? You all got? Now I would caution, if that is the case, nihilist, so they do not believe in cause and effect. Nihilist. Huh? Right. Now here normally we say, unestablished means those, nihilist, they, when we, because it's a dependent origin, devoid of, empty of inherent existence. If we say because it's dependent origination, they say dependent origination is non-existence. So therefore, for them, not established. Dependent origination is not established for them. So that means they do not believe. Very clear. Right? So it says, unestablished, So they don't believe in cause and effect. Think.
They shouldn't, and if they do, they will be contradictory.
Huh?
That philosophy. No, I said I'm not familiar with that philosophy, but if that is the case, they shouldn't believe cause and effect. But if they do, it will be contradictory to.
So they don't believe in cause and effect. You mean, right?
They believe in. I think they believe cause and effect, but their definition is different. Their definition is different. For example, in modern society, many scientists they don't believe in next life. They don't believe in their believing is more like nihilism, right? They don't believe next life. They don't believe cause and effect in the past life, current life, future life. But does not mean they don't believe cause and effect in this life.
Oh.
Right. Like many scientists, the thing they research, it's all finding the reasons and the cause and the reasons, cause and result, right? So in that sense, they believe in
So they, but then when we say dependent origination, we refer to causal, right? Causal dependent origination. Causal means cause and effect, right? As I said earlier, some there we see there are the P, some kind of P, the tones, the sharpness of the tone. When you ask them, is there any cause? They say no. The shape of the P, why it is so? They say no cause. Right? So they do believe in they deny the cause and effect. Right? Also in this life too. Otherwise they don't say the sharpness of the tone, why the sharpness of the tone? They say there is no cause. Normally when we say, if you were to give the example of those who believe in the school of thought, who believe in the non-existence of the cause and effect, the causal theory, they say Charvakaya, nihilist. They say they don't believe in the cause and effect. Right? No, this is the what is stated. Right? Now, if that is the case, then I say, in nihilist, are there any farmer?
The farmers?
Yeah, farmer. Any peasant? Any farmer?
Yes.
So, that's nihilist, a farmer nihilist. They do the farm work?
They do.
They do. So, they understand, so they know, if they, they can harvest the crop.
Right.
They understand, right?
Yes.
They understand if they sow something, if they sow, rice, they get the result, they know. Right?
Right.
So they believe. So they believe in the cause and effect now.
Right.
What they saying here. Right. If they work hard, they get to eat, they do believe. Nihilist. Or they don't, they, or we would say, oh, they don't believe, they don't believe cause and effect, like this. So they ignorantly try to do all this, farm work. So the nihilist, so they, many we call some philosophy, right? Traditional philosophy, which is which are which are outside the Buddhist system, they have fallen into the extreme of the eternalism, right? Why? Because they have fallen into the extreme of eternalism, because they do believe in the self is eternal. Self is eternal. Because why they do believe the self is eternal is because in some, in the as we said last time, in ancient, Indian tradition, there are a lot of, very old, very philosophy, very rich, very rich in philosophy. So some they do believe also, through their practice, they are able to reincarnate. They are able to reincarnate. So what they do believe is, there must be have something which reincarnate, right? So some, some they, through, they achieve, samadhi, some concentration, some kind of concentration, or what they call as clairvoyance, clear awareness to look back into the past life. So they see, when they see, they come to understand, they are born as a sometimes pig, sometimes horse, right? So sometimes as a dog, like this. So they think, oh, now taking a birth, the main cause is the acting like dog, they're acting like the horse, acting like cow. So in this life they do the same like thing, while laying down, eating, all these things, because they see the main cause for taking human rebirth is acting like cow, all this animal like this. So anyway, they think there must be something which reincarnate, reincarnate. So they have great difficulty. So who's that? When they die, it's very well known that our body get cremated, right? Our body get cremated, or whatever it is done, whether it is thrown into the river or whatever, everything is finished, done, right? But then something is going inside, because there are some people who remember the past life, who recall the past life. So there must be something who recall the past life. So they believe. If they believe the aggregate, physical aggregate already cremated, then who? So they finally believe there is eternal, there is soul, there is something self which is eternal, which goes from life to life, which goes after life, over life to life. So that's why they believe. They do not believe the designation. The profundity and the flexibility of how things work at the designation level, right? And then also the continuity of the mind, right? Yeah, in the tradition, some very very through practice, they also gain control over their birth. Some this in non-Buddhist in Indian tradition philosophy, they also can a lot of rich in philosophy anyway. So so therefore these have fallen into the, and also it is not surprising that because when dead person come, when somebody died, you transfer the consciousness into the dead person, right, body. So this is not also found in the Indian tradition, in ancient tradition, right. So therefore, now they wonder. Again, there must be somebody who is traveling, who need to in order to enter, there must be something. It's very clear that this body itself is not a person. The body is not itself is the person. There must be something going there, the enterer. So again, they believe self, eternal self, the self, permanent self, the unitary. The soul is, the self is unitary, permanent, and independent. So, because they do believe in this, they have fallen into the extreme of eternalism. Why they have fallen into the extreme of nihilism is because they do not believe in the theory of the karmic law, right? Something like this.
How is this established in the different Buddhist school in terms of the subject of reincarnation in Buddhist tradition? In Buddhist tradition, in different schools, how is this being ascertained that what is the subject of reincarnation?
They do say, for example, now we take an example, right? This so though some they believe in the now, for example, mental consciousness, for example, lower school, some of the lower school, they do believe it is the mental consciousness. Now if you look at the the circle of the 12 links of dependent origination, 12 links of the dependent origination, if you try to understand this, that the presentation of the 12 links of dependent origination, these are presented in the lower school like Vavishiga and the Sautrantika, right, and the Chidamanin school, and also the Chidam Yogacharya, the Madhyamika school, and also the Sautrantika Madhyamika school, in the Sautrantika Madhyamika and Yogacharya Madhyamika school, and also in the high school. So in the lower school, much lower school, they do believe in the the consciousness. Mental consciousness is the person. So it is the mental consciousness which goes on to life after life. Whereas in the mind only school, they assert the eight consciousness. They assert the eight consciousness, eight different kinds of consciousness, and the last one, Kunshi, the mind basis of all. Kunshi is the mind basis of all, where all the imprints are being stored in that mind.
Is it called alaya?
Yeah, alaya, something like Kunshi. Yeah, all the imprints are being stored. That the consciousness, that the mind basis of all is neither virtuous nor non-virtuous. It is a neutral consciousness. So therefore, because it is a neutral, the storage of all the karmics can be posited. It's reasonable to bring the storage of all the karmic imprints, right? Because in order to store the karma, the storage or the foundation need to be very stable. Your I consciousness cannot be the storage, because when we die, all this ceased. Then if you go a little further, now Southern the Madhyamika, Southern Dika Madhyamika, or this Yogacharya Madhyamika, in this school, again they do believe in the mental consciousness. Mental consciousness is the person. Mental consciousness is what goes on life after life, continually. Right, because now what they do say is beautifully, because your consciousness at the time of death, your consciousness, in the last minute it stops. Because it stops, it continues. What reason is going is because it is the state of the craving mind. Any kind of craving mind should continue in the next life. And then what other beautiful example is used? They use the breathing as example. There is a continuity of the breathing. For example, the small child, when the child is born, the child begins to breathe. Where does that breathing come from? Then they say, Buddhists, they say they all come from the continuity from the past, like this. Now, the most sophisticated, the most profound, the most sophisticated philosophy, really, beautiful and flexible, is now in the consequentialist Prasangika Madhyamika. The Prasangika Madhyamika, what they do say is, the person, when we talk about person, there is no independent person. When we talk about the person is something which is designated on the five aggregates. Designated. The I or the person which is mere designated on the five aggregates, right? Now what goes in the next life? What goes on in the next life? Because the person which is mere designated on the five aggregates, right? We already discussed. For example, we are called lawyer. You are being called lawyer. You are being called, doctor. there is certain basis. I as a doctor, I as a lawyer is basis on some kind of the basis of designation. On this, on that basis of designation, we call this is lawyer John, Dr. John. From that moment onwards, the basis of designation can act as the can become the basis upon which we call the doctor or lawyer, right? So, but then what happened when we as a doctor, we as a lawyer, we as a student, when we died? Right? When we died, what happened? Your body is left behind. Doctor is left behind. Doctor cannot go to the next life. You as a lawyer, you as a student, you as a nurse, whatever we call, have to left behind. But the person is going to the next life. Now, what person is going to the next life? Right? Now, what person is going in the next life is now we have two kinds of self. It look, because one self is designated on the 5 aggregates. The self of this life, is designated on the self of the 5 aggregates of this life. This is number 1. Number 2 is there is a universal self. Because universal this self pervades to the 3 times. This self pervades to the 3 times, whereas the self of this life, right, when at the point of death, when the 5 aggregates are ceased, the I which is designated on the 5 aggregates are ceased automatically. Now, what goes on in this life is the universal self, which pervades the 3 times. This self now goes on in the next life, life after life. And then what happens is, when we talk about the universal self, when we talk about the self which pervades over to the 3 times, right? This self, because it's a phenomena, it's a person, so that self is designated, should have some basis of designation. Now, what is the basis of designation? Is the continuity of the consciousness. Right? So, when the self goes on in the next life, the continuity of the consciousness carries on in the next life after life. So, there is a continuity of the consciousness which continues endlessly, continuously, life after life. Therefore, it's very easy. Now it's very simple, flexible, right? Now, therefore, the person experiences happiness, the person experiences suffering. I am going to achieve liberation, I am going to achieve enlightenment. If I don't be careful, I will suffer. If I do good, I will gain good. Who? I, universal I, right? So, we do good deeds, we do get bad deeds. Whether the deeds are bad or whether the deeds are good, whether the deeds are evil or something constructive, all the deeds, the positive deeds and the positive karma and the negative karma, the propensity, the tendency are being stored in the continuity of the consciousness. Is being stored at the self, which is universal self, the universal self, right? So therefore, it's easy, right? Because then, because we come from past life, here, I am here. Then it's very easy, I am good, I am happy, I want to achieve liberation, I want to achieve happiness. The karma is happening upon me. If I do good, good karma is happening upon me. If I do bad, bad karma is happening upon me. Who experienced the karma? The person. I experienced the karma. Right? So, I is the storage of the karma. Very beautiful. Not complicated. Not complicated.
In these cases, we're taught let me think about the questions. But in terms of the ordinary beings, right, where we reincarnate lifetime after lifetime, this universal self in the high school, or the mind, the consciousness that is reincarnating, the ordinary being grasp the consciousness or grasp the universal self as permanent. That's why reincarnation constantly happens. Right? If one can destroy this grasping, and then reincarnation will be stopped.
No. So, right, now here, we come from past, we go to the next, we go to the next life. Right. So, this is functional, this is a functional, this can be positive, right. We cannot negate this thing, because this is functional, this is relative truth, this is conventional. Now, what we are trying to do is, what we are trying to negate, what we are trying to negate is the absolute I, the absolute self. This self, we say, do not exist. Once we are able to stop that, once we are able to stop grasping at this independent self, intrinsic self, then we say we will have no karmic birth. We will not take karmic birth. If we don't take karmic birth, we are to take rebirth. What kind of rebirth? Then rebirth motivated out of compassion, out of prayers. There are different kinds of taking rebirth, not necessarily the karma. But so long as we have not destroy the grasping, then we will have karmic birth, karmic rebirth, right? So, this is there are every phenomena, anything existed, have the two nature. One is the emptiness nature and one is the relative nature. Relative nature exists. When we talk about the emptiness nature, what is empty of? The empty of negation, the empty of intrinsic reality, right? So, the things have, when it appears, have the tendency to appear as solid and also appear to solid, but we follow that solidness. We don't follow what's behind. What's the real, what's the ultimate nature? The ultimate nature is empty of inherent existence. So, this we do not know, right? Like this. So, in many of the so therefore, in the high school, Prasangika mathematical school, what they are trying is to negate is independent self. the self which is independent, which is unitary, right, which is permanent. This is easy to negate. This is easy to negate. You don't need wisdom. You don't need wisdom to destroy this self. However, when we try to deal with the more subtle negation, then we need the wisdom to put an end to the grasping which believe in the intrinsic absolute self, right.
In the highest yoga tantra, we say the mind that going close to reincarnation, lifetime after lifetime, is a clear light mind, right? So in the ultimate truth, we also ascertain the clear light mind as inherently empty of inherent existence, right?
Inherent clear light mind.
Clear light mind is empty of inherent existence.
Yeah.
Not having a permanent nature.
But in the highest yoga tantra, from the speaking of the highest yoga tantra down, it's a finally it's a very clear light mind, which has no continuity, right? Which has no continuity, and then
has continuity, right?
which has which keeps on continue, right? Life after life, and so in terms of continuity, in some texts called for example like Buddha's enlightened deeds. Buddha's enlightened deeds are sometimes called as permanent, right? Because in what sense permanent is? Because it never ceased. It never ceased to function. The enlightened deeds never ceased. Where there is compassion, Buddha's loving compassion, enlightened deeds is always there. It never comes to cease. From that perspective, it is also called the something eternal, permanent.
To understand better, for ordinary being, everyone has a clear mind, right? Ordinary being, the reason why they cannot escape samsara, sees the incarnations, rebirth, is because can we say that even because at the point of death, like the course consciousness and the body, they all not related, they are all ceased, right? So can we say the main reason is because one has not destroyed the grasping of permanent self in the clear light mind?
Not necessarily, right? For example, in order to escape from the what is called as the karmic the cycle of birth, aging, sickness, and death, you don't need to enter into the Vajrayana practice, right?
Right.
Even by gaining insight into the nature of the ultimate nature of reality, right? And also by attaining the cessation quality, the cessation, complete pacification of the suffering and the ignorance, grasping. Not necessarily, you after gaining all these attainments or realization, not necessarily need to go through the karmic birth. Still, bodhisattvas, those the practitioners of the Hinayana, they can take the birth in the in some cases Pure Land, right? But and also in some cases can remain in the samsara. But what causes them to remain in samsara? Out of compassion, not necessarily great compassion, but compassion and prayers, right? So like these things possible. I think now it says 6. Yeah, there are different kinds of birth, the karmic birth, out of those emanation of body, emanation of enlightened beings. There, where there is a maximum suffering, they take a birth, right? And then some they out of compassion, some they out of their prayers, right? And it's okay, yeah. In some cases, the Hinayana practitioners, they also take birth in the Pure Land. That is mostly, due to the very subtle energy, motivated out of the subtle energy of the obscuration, subtle obscuration, so they can take birth in the Pure Land. So like this.
In terms of the point you discussed with Sankhya Madhyamika's view on reincarnation, right? You mentioned there are two types of self. One is the self designate on the five aggregates of this life. One, the universal self designate on the continuity of consciousness, right? So, since as you mentioned, on one at the point of death, right, the self designate on the current five aggregates ceased, right? So does that mean if we are trying to realize the emptiness, to negate the permanent grasping of self, should we focus more on the grasping on universal self as this permanent self, instead of negating grasping of the self on designate on the five aggregates as permanent? Sounds like we should focus more on the latter one to negate grasping on that instead of the five aggregates, right?
When we go through the experience and practice, right, and right now we have no control, to let manifest which one, right? So therefore, in our ordinary life, something manifest, right? Something manifest, the innate one, right? Innate one, something the solid appearance. Just the solid appearance is what we are trying to negate, the solid appearance, and believing in the solid appearance, that solid independent, phenomena, appearance, self or phenomena, whatever it is. This is what we are trying to negate, just as it appears, just as we are grasping at it, it does not exist, through the use of many logic and many reason. So this is what we are trying to prove, Yeah, then I think we better then we continue with the next.